And the clock is ticking, of course. Congress has just 43 scheduled work days between now and the end of the fiscal year to get this done. This is incredible. We are down to 43 working days for the rest of the year for Congress to get anything done, John.
Right.
John Hilsenrath.
Two things. One is President Trump should be focusing all of his attention right now on Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. Those, whether you like them or not, those two people are critical to him advancing his agenda. If he wants to get health done, if he wants to get tax reform done, it's got to go through them, and he should really be focusing on building them up. The other thing is there's a debt ceiling issue that they have to resolve in that 43 days, which could complicate matters.
Yeah. It sounds crazy that we're talking about the clock ticking already, but it's absolutely true. If they can't get something of significance done before August, before the recess, they're in serious trouble, I would argue. And, they have been spending all their time putting out fires, some of them of their own doing because of the problems with messaging and discipline out of the White House and communications problems. But they have got to get a big win.
But this is also what the Dems are doing, though. I mean, you look at Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. They are trying hard to obstruct and not allow the agenda to go forward. He's falling forward. I agree with that.
I disagree with you on that one.
And he gets in his own way.
Because they only need 50 votes in the Senate. The way they're structuring the health care and the tax bills, they only need 50 votes. They don't need any Dems to get any of this done. So it really comes down to Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. Can they get a coalition behind both of those?
So you blame the Republicans because they're fractured?
I'm not blaming anyone. Let's see if they get it done.
I will. I blame the Republicans. I absolutely blame the Republicans that they can't get. You know what? If they obviously can't lean on President Trump too much in terms of driving the agenda. As much as they've tried, just when they released that one-pager on tax reform, it was incomplete. Criticized for that because he rushed it through. The ball is in their court. They're driving the bus. They have no excuses. The Democrats don't need to do anything.
But both
they don't need to do anything.
It's still too early to give credit or blame, right? So if they get it done, they get all the credit. But if they don't, it's on them.
Right now, they get the
blame. Both things are true that you're saying. Both things. I agree absolutely. The Dems are. It's all about obstruction. If it wasn't Russia that they were working, they would be doing some other issue. It doesn't matter to them. But at the same. But they're both true, right? The Republicans are at fault because they can't seem to pull themselves together, and part of it is the problems with discipline out of the White House. But there's absolutely both of those things are happening at the same time. It's not, it's not one or the other.
Well, let's take let's go specific into it. Border adjustment tax.
Right.
Freedom Caucus doesn't want it. The White House doesn't want it. Paul Ryan holding on to it. He wants it.
That's what I was going to say. Is these are hard, complicated issues. Getting a tax overhaul done. We haven't had one in almost 30 years for a reason. It's really hard to get all these competing coalitions, even within a party, to agree on something like border adjustment or removing the deduction on corporate interest payments.
But they rolled out that tax reform plan a year ago, and clearly there were a lot of Republicans in the House and the Senate who were not in favor of it. You ask any of them, they're like, I'm not voting for anything that raises the cost of imported goods, that raises the cost of things that people buy at Target and Walmart by 20% or thereabouts. I'm not voting for anything that raises the cost of gasoline 20%.
We should stop complaining about imports from China and Mexico if people are so reluctant to pay more for their stuff at Target.
Well, again, there's the rub.
Well, there are winners and losers with the border adjustment tax. We know that, depending on the industries. I would say there are three main things that the fight is happening over on tax reform: the border adjustment tax, the deductions. We've talked about the deductions, like the property deduction. Many people don't want
state and local. All blue states.
And then the third thing is the corporate rate. Don't underestimate the corporate rate. That's also being argued because the White House wants 15%. The president has said that he wants 15%. Paul Ryan and the Republicans were all the way up at 25, 28%.
But how do you
Maybe they agree on 22%.
How do you get 15% if you won't take the border adjustment? The numbers have to add up.
And
you've got to be willing to make some sacrifice.
That's the debate. But you would think that they would have had this debate already. As you said, they came out with this idea, this plan a year ago.
7 years to figure out a replacement for Obamacare, and you've got all these senators saying we're starting from scratch. Now they're further along. Clearly, they had the working group, and they're in the process of writing something. So I don't want to diminish what they've been able to accomplish, but nevertheless, they set up the American people who voted for the Republicans and for Donald Trump to have something ready to go right out of the gate, and they didn't. Clearly.
Well, Ryan seems completely unwilling to give up the border adjustment tax. He's not going to drop drop that. And the other thing is, though, the Republicans are you can just see them. Nobody wants to put their head above the wall because it seems like they're constantly ducking and dodging these daily missives from the White House, the tweets that the media uses as ammunition. You know, don't keep giving them the opportunity, right?
Well, then there are active investigations. James Comey will testify this Thursday. That's going to take all of the oxygen out of the room. So it's going to be all about James Comey and this Russian investigation.
Maybe that gives Ryan and McConnell the space to work behind the scenes. I'm trying to be optimistic here.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they say they're doing.
That's very optimistic.
I'm not. But they do say that they're doing that,
But the president needs to be finding ways to strengthen those two men, Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, because his whole agenda hangs on them getting this coalition together.
And the Wall Street Journal has been very critical of President Trump. There's another editorial today called "The Buck Stops Everywhere Else," speaking of him going after, you know, having his recent Twitter storm in the last day or so. But they had an earlier editorial that was talking about, say, the tax reform plan coming out of the White House, that it was rushed out, it was incomplete. The White House Economic Council was working on something, and he was in a hurry. And again, it's just disorganization, and ultimately that falls on the commander-in-chief's shoulders.
And that op-ed today is questioning why he is basically questioning his Department of Justice.
Right.
In the tweet. I mean, I thought that op-ed was
very, you know, that was
very good.
It was very good. And then you're trolling the mayor of London that's just been hit by a terror attack.
That's the part that drives me crazy. From an operational perspective, that serves no purpose whatsoever.
No,
and it diminishes the size of the presidency.
Well, the White House says that they are turning their focus back to the agenda today.